Welcome. Welcome to the Mythic Life Podcast. I am your host, Eric Brummett, and I am so excited to be here with all of you to share some incredible insights that I have about some inner child work and the development of our bodies and some really fascinating processes that we do in some of the Theta Healing courses. If you are not familiar with me, I've been practicing Theta Healing for 24 years now. I started my practice when I was quite young. I was only 21 when I first got certified as a Theta Healer and went on to become an instructor in the year 2000, 2001, and launched my healing practice in New York City in 2003 and have done nothing but Theta Healing with people since. Of course, always learning and exploring and studying, but have always found that the techniques within Theta Healing best serviced my clients and have best supported me in my life. And today I want to go deep into two really fascinating courses in Theta Healing. They are both growing your relationships courses, you and your inner circle, and love of self. These are some of the newer Theta Healing courses. They're referred to as elective Theta Healing courses. So there are prerequisites to them, but something really unique in these courses is that it talks about how we developed, how we grew, right? So we all have this powerful, intelligent, wise soul that is eternal. And we chose to come into this life. We come in with a sense of intention and purpose in our spirit. And we come into the development of being human into this body that goes through stages of growth. One really unique thing about being a human is that there is a difference between humans and other animals, other species in our growth. We come out so underdeveloped. Our nervous system is not mapped when we are born. The biology of our muscles are not built when we are born. We can't come out walking. We don't come out talking. We don't come out knowing how to eat or anything. It's incredible how much our body is designed to map through experiencing life. And this is the fascinating thing, is that there is this incredible intelligence in our biology that is intuitive. We are sensory beings that feel, see, smell, hear, taste, and through every sense that we receive, we have a sense that we can project. You don't just see, but you project visual. You don't just hear, you express yourself with voice. You don't just feel, but you have movement, right? So every sense actually is both a receptor and a projector. And this also is intuitive. For every sense that you're designed with, your hardwiring of your sensory is also the hardwiring and mapping of your intuition, which is a powerful intelligence that is something that comes with you from the personality and characteristics of your soul. And you come in to express yourself in certain ways. You come in with that intention to pursue experiencing life and having certain kinds of relationships and having signature moments with individuals and places and expressing yourself creatively and learning and experiencing life through your body, right? So through all of this, as you are experiencing life, your body is mapping. And as your body maps and matures, so does your psychology. And our mind has to formulate our character, has to integrate our soul's personality through experiencing life in certain ways. And there are stages to this. There are certain things that we are meant to experience as a child before we become an adult. And there's things that we are meant to experience as an adult before we move on into being a sage, um, a crone, an elder. Okay. And as an elder, you then are in this place of more freedom and movement, of the best qualities of a child and the best abilities as a responsible adult, and have that freedom to have certain boundaries and certain ways of understanding yourself. And all of this are things that we go into in You and Your Inner Circle, which is about relationships. It's about really looking at who you're in relationship with. Are they acting as a child to you? Are they being responsible? Are they being needy? Are they being honest? Are they being committed? And there's these evaluations that you do for yourself, how you express yourself in a relationship, along with how people in your life express themselves to you, to see how close this person really is meant to be for you. So many friends maybe should be a client. So many friends should maybe be an acquaintance. And certain people, maybe you don't realize, could be invited into your inner circle. And maybe you've been walling off because of past betrayals and traumas and hurts. So there's these processes that we get into of realizing that you as a child, when you were young, so many of you and so many I've worked with ended up having to step into responsibilities and independence a little too early. you know um, Maybe you felt, because of the chaos and not feeling safe in the home, like you had to find your own way and take care of yourself and be responsible for yourself. Maybe you even felt like you had to be responsible for your parents emotionally or even physically, sometimes even financially. These are some of the elements that we explore in You and Your Inner Circle. And the amazing thing is that we can heal this, because if we become adults too quickly, then when we have to take on certain types of relationships, when we have our own children, sometimes we overcorrect. Sometimes we become critical to try and fix our childhood through the way that we raise our child. And this becomes this really harsh, struggling things. But that could also be in work. Sometimes we get really stressed and have anxiety and overdo the amount of pressures that we put on ourselves, because of an overcorrection from needs that weren't met in our own childhood. You see, there are these things that we were meant to work on, that we were meant to have, and that were meant to be provided for us. Things like, we are meant to feel safe. We were meant to be cherished, to be considered, to be acknowledged, to be encouraged, to be guided in our play and creativity so that we could develop an imagination, and to learn how to share and be considerate to others as well, and to learn those baseline ethics and morals of how to treat people, how to learn compassion and kindness. Because if we don't, sometimes we struggle as adults being compassionate. Sometimes we become numb. Sometimes we become critical or harsh. And that might be in one area of your life and not in another area of your life. It depends on where you shut down, where your needs were not met in the maturing and growth of your life. And this is a big piece that we work on and in You and Your Inner Circle. Now, the Love of Self course is the newest Theta Healing course. And this class gets into neurodivergence, and it gets into the mapping of our nervous system and the expression of our personality and our intuition. You see, your intuition is a sixth sense, but it courses through your other five senses. It has an expression and a reception to each sense. And as you develop in your body and you become integrated and you become grounded in your space, first person, present with your breath, with the earth, with your surroundings, and you become environmentally aware, you become aware of your internal self, you become aware of your responses, you develop intuition with it. Intuition is awareness in this way. And as we cultivate this awareness, we develop our intuition, and then we start to navigate higher thoughts. We navigate higher feelings. We navigate higher sensory to be guided to gain clarity in our life and in our purpose and in our choices and in our actions and in our manifestations. We discover ourselves in this way. Yet there are situations in our life that can shut down, cause distress, cause trauma, dissociation, and hardship. That can be outside stresses, that can be not feeling safe, that could be facing, abuses of corporal punishment, being criticized, being yelled at, being neglected, being unsupported. That could also be chemical traumas of medications that are not right and too severe, antibiotics that cause us to not be able to feel and not feel good in the body, illnesses, that can be biological expressions of genetics, that could be lack of oxygen, or that could be being malnourished. So there's a lot of different things. That could be food dyes, or all the preservatives and vaccines. It could be all these different elements that cause distress and dissociation and trauma on a cellular and chemical level that freezes our nervous system, that causes disconnection and dissociation and mental health and depression and anxiety, and can lead us from a characteristic to a neurodivergence. So this is the thing with neurodivergence. It's actually something that it's pretty modern. It's really about 30 years old, this concept of neurodivergence. You see, labeling in health and identifying these characteristics and qualities was never there earlier on. There wasn't a lot of intervention, early childhood intervention. There was not special education like there was pre 85 and post. I think it was more like 88, 89 that they started to recognize more of a spectrum to autism instead of it just being this autistic severe. And there became these spectrums to ADD, ADHD, Tourette's, all of these learning abilities, learning disabilities, right, that you run into, of people having struggles with their auditory, with their visual learning, with being able to read and write properly. And then there's these elements of OCD, right? And all of these diagnoses and labels. And the thing about it being a spectrum of these labels is that on one hand, there is a more severe situation where it is causing distress and functionality in the person's life and in their biology and health and needs extra support and intervention. And then there's the other side of the spectrum that sometimes is very missed, is not known about, or maybe they grew up before these diagnoses and labels came into play and they had to navigate and find their way to functionality, yet it started to cultivate a certain personality trait to come out. So this can cause a lot of social struggles, feeling misunderstood, not knowing how to express certain emotions, having struggles in functionality in your life of being organized, having self-discipline, keeping track of things, being on time, struggles with time management, right? Like all these things that people get into and with life coaching and personal development. And yet there are incredible intelligence and intuitions within them that can emerge if we do the work on where they shut down, where they felt traumatized, and a way to process trauma. You see, trauma and PTSD are really one and the same. When people visit trauma, the difference between trauma and PTSD is that PTSD is where you are always living in the trauma. It is a broken record where you are always in the trauma, in your mental state and your emotions and your sensory and your environment, right? It's imprinted into you and you're trapped in the moment of trauma. And that is PTSD. Trauma is something that is held in the cells of the body. It can affect the psychology and emotions. It can cause mental health problems. It can feed into neurodivergence. And when you do a lot of processes for healing of trauma, you are triggering PTSD. You're usually revisiting. And when you make your trauma present in order to address it and process it, it is re-traumatizing for the cells of the body. It is not the way to actually heal trauma. You have to have distance from the trauma and observe it with growth away from it in order to be able to heal it. And this is something that we process and work on in the Love of Self course. You learn to use the Theta Healing practices and techniques to work on trauma without having to re-traumatize your spirit, your psychology, and your physiology in order to process and heal it. You don't have to somatically move it through with touch, with sensations, with breath work. That's reliving your trauma in a way to move it through, okay? You do not have to try and dig into the beliefs and into the psychology with talk therapies. That's re-traumatizing and doesn't work. You don't have to bring the memory forward and then do eye movements as a way of processing it with EMDR. These techniques do address and are incredible for working with and healing trauma, yet they are re-traumatizing and re-anchoring of ego identity with I am traumatized. There is another way, and this is what we do in the Love of Self class. And it's something that I've been so deeply invested in because so many of my clients to all different degrees have faced trauma and abuse. And trauma is its own spectrum in this way, from things that can take you all the way into dissociative identity disorders and bipolar and depression and PTSD, right? So all the way to these other places of just being shut down in ourselves, being emotionally shut down, being shut down in our psychology, being shut down in our functionality of even being able to complete reading a book or express ourselves in conversations without feeling awkward. This is something that a lot of people face. They face places where when they express themselves, they feel misunderstood. They feel awkward. They feel overwhelmed in groups more than a couple people. They feel overwhelmed by auditory sounds and avoid going to parties because of it. It's something that I actually face, which is hilarious because I loved parties when I was growing up. I was extremely social. I threw the best parties in Santa Cruz. And yet, for years, for over a decade now, I have avoided big groups and going out to parties because once there's ambient noise, I can't focus on hearing the conversation of the other person. And I mishear them and I say something to what I misheard, or I express myself and it's awkward in these situations. And I didn't know how to process it. And so I did this class, I took it twice. And as I looked at that, I went, when did I shut down in my hearing? And I went to these memories where I realized I heard something that shut me down. I didn't have a process for dealing with feelings from how I was shut down, and it affected my learning. It affected my auditory learning, and it affected my sensory. It affected my hearing. And I shut down my intuition in that way. I shut down my sensory in that way, and it was acting in these ways. So this is something that we process. So as I did this work on myself, all of a sudden now I can get through reading books a lot easier. I don't struggle with them. I can have more focus in those conversations with people. And I can have focus when there's ambient sound, which is so wonderful because I love going to live music with people. And you're not just going to be out dancing the whole time. You'll probably take a little breather and have a conversation with your friend. So these processes can be so powerful and so healing. So I've been bringing this into my sessions, and it is incredible when I merge the information from you and your inner circle of the child needs and the trauma work with how and when people shut down. As I dig into where they shut down and what happens, I bring in the inner circle work of what needs were you having at that time. And as we get through those needs and possible betrayals from people in their life at that time, and we then process the trauma by creating space and maturing and growth out of it, it fulfills and heals the inner child and what the child self was needing to be able to mature and grow into a healthy, functional adult space, and bring them all the way through that maturing to a place where they have this empowerment and they have self-compassion for what they've gone through and have integration to their mindset, their nervous system, and their functionality. And it has been such an incredible process with them. It's been so powerful. And I'm so excited I get to teach these courses coming up. I'm teaching the Love of Self course online this October 19th and 20th, which is just this coming weekend. And then I also get to teach the Inner Circle course this coming November. So, if you want to check it out, go to our website, look at our upcoming schedule. We have all of our upcoming courses there. And if you're new to Theta Healing, we want to get to know you and see what it is that speaks to you about it, because you are so intuitively gifted. You're magical. You have intention for this life. You have purpose from your spirit, your soul. And there's things happening in your life that have been manifesting that Maybe you haven't really fully embraced who you are, what your characteristics and qualities are, and what life your soul was meant to live, what kinds of relationships, how you want to show up in them, where you want to live, what lifestyle is most authentic to you. These are such important things. Like, you chose this life, you're in this life. No matter how many lifetimes you live, you're in this one right now. And make the most beautiful life of it, because you are learning, you are growing, and maybe there's just some places that could use some healing. And it can all heal. You do not have to struggle through it or fight it. And that's what we're here for. This is what Theta Healing is about. It's what Mythic Life is about. Mythic Life is discovering a soul led intuitive life, that you have the tools through your intuition and through the development of your body, with superpowers, with this magic, to be able to discover, get guidance, listen, and create the life that you want. So if you're new to this podcast, make sure that you subscribe so that you get these messages, so that you can be guided. And check us out. We have some free events as well that you can learn and develop your intuition with, discover the brainwave that heals. And I look forward to seeing you all soon. I hope to see you in courses or in a session. Thanks for joining, everyone.